Hello, everybody. Andy Jacob here with the DotCom Magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight Series. Settle into your seats today, because one thing that drives business, and all the entrepreneurs know this from watching the show, we love talking about negotiation. And when you have the ability to have a greater confidence in yourself and have a greater capability of negotiating, things really work out much better for you in your life, your career, your business, whatever you're doing. And of course, you know from watching the show as well, we love people and companies that have an expertise in a certain vertical. So we've been able to bring on someone who is one of the master negotiators. He trains negotiation in the real estate space. His name is Mr. Tom Hayman. He, of course, is the founder and CEO of the Real Estate Negotiation Institute. And he is making such an impact, and his team, of course, is making such an impact in the real estate space. Most likely, when you work with a real estate agent, they've either heard of the Real Estate Negotiation Institute, they've done business with them, they've learned from them, they've created an entire negotiation profile and platform using the RENI platform and what they teach through the system. So, Tom, it's a great honor to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Andy. It's a real pleasure to be here.
I mean, here you go. I mean, you've got so much experience. We want to get into negotiation. So many entrepreneurs that watch the show have reached out and said, Jake or Andy, when you get someone that understands negotiation and the space, well, we have a few questions for you. But before we get started, let's pull the lens back to 30,000 feet. Tell us about the Real Estate Negotiation Institute, and then we're going to get into it.
Okay. Real Estate Negotiation Institute was founded in 2005. I had a corporate career in Procter & Gamble, the #1 consumer products company in the world, for 25 years. 21 in Cincinnati, Ohio, where I was raised, and 4 years in Japan, where I got the opportunity to run part of the Far East operations. So I was in the corporate purchasing organization. And at that time, we spent about $23 billion a year on goods and services to make our products. So we had to know how to negotiate effectively to get the best value for the company. I had the great fortune to be trained at some of the best schools in the country, both in the US and in Europe. So that was my background when I got into real estate. I had to, unfortunately, retire from Procter & Gamble. I lost my wife to cancer, and I had 2 teenagers that I needed to spend more time with. And when you have a global job in the corporate world, it requires a lot of travel, and I just couldn't do that. So I moved to Phoenix, Arizona from Cincinnati to kind of start over, and I took a while to figure out what I wanted to do. And I figured real estate was a good fit for a couple of reasons. Number one, it would give me control of my own time. The vast majority of real estate agents are independent contractors, not employees. And number two, I really felt my negotiation skill set would benefit my clients, which it did. But when I got into real estate's a state business. Each state does it differently. So you have to take pre-licensing to get trained to pass the state test to get your license. So in Arizona, it's 90 hours. And I was really curious as to what they would teach about negotiation in real estate. So in the 90 hours, they spent zero time on professional negotiation training. And the first day of school, the classroom was packed, standing room only, and the owner of the school came in and made the following statement. He said, just so you understand the data and statistics, 80% of you will not pass the state test to get licensed. Of those of you who do pass the state test, 2 years from now, when it comes time to renew your license, 80% of you will not renew your license. And my first reaction was, that's a horrible failure rate. I've never heard of that in any industry before. Number one. Number two, why? And I figured out over time that one of the real reasons was the lack of professional skill development training. So I got into real estate to help others, and I realized that there were a lot of really good people in real estate who came into it with the sincere desire to be successful, but they weren't getting the training they needed. So if I wanted to really help people, I could help more people by getting agents trained with the skill set they need to be successful, they would get better results for their clients. And it would be a true win-win-win for brokerages who would have better trained agents, for agents who are better trained to get better results for their clients, and for clients to have better agents who would get them better results. That's the way we looked at it.
I love it, Tom. What a great story. You saw that they did zero on negotiation, and you said to yourself, oh, this is sort of an open corridor, an open lane where I can take my expertise and build a great company. And we talk about negotiation skill set, of course, Tom. And in the real estate industry, we think of client acquisition. You have to go out and you have to talk to clients, whether you are going to list their property or whether you're going to help them buy a property, or you have to build trust with clients in a certain way, and you have to negotiate sale and purchase terms for your clients. And it goes on and on and on. I mean, executing contracts, that's a big part of it. When someone reaches out to RENI and they say, hey, we want our firm, we want our entire brokerage, to join and to learn, the RENI methodology, the RENI way, this award-winning training that's going to transform my real estate business. What's that conversation sound like that you have with either the broker or an individual agent or someone that actually has a multiple brokerage type of a firm or a operation?
It's a really fun conversation to have, Andy, because people don't know what they don't know. And many brokers who came up, through the system that they came up in, they didn't have negotiation training either. Now, you can learn negotiation over time through experience, through failures and successes, but you can accelerate that process if you get good training. So what we try to make readily apparent, a lot of agents don't recognize and brokers, is that negotiation skill set is the one skill set that's utilized in the entire life cycle of real estate. Well, as you mentioned, lead generation and client acquisition is a starting point. You've got to be able to persuade potential clients to contact you and at least get you in the conversation to represent them. If they choose you as their agent, you then have to negotiate a representation agreement that has terms and conditions in it, which includes your fee. And then the whole contract, as you mentioned, the purchase contract, the initial terms and agreements result from a series of offers and counteroffers back and forth between the buyers and sellers, but they don't get together face to face to do their own negotiating. They have to rely on their agent to represent them in the negotiation. And if agents, all they do is pass paper back and forth, they're not really doing a good job of negotiating and representing their client. Once the contract is signed by the buyer and seller, now it has to be executed. And every purchase contract has clauses in it that require potentially additional negotiations to change the initial terms. For example, the buyer has the right to do due diligence, do inspections of the property. If there are major systems issues or safety issues they want the seller to fix, that's a whole nother negotiation. So to get the final terms negotiated to close is a set of negotiations. Once the deal is closed, both agents now have past clients that they want to get testimonials from, ratings from, and future referrals, which all requires persuasion and influence as well. So it's the one skill set that is not only a business skill set, but it's really a life skill set. If you think about our interactions daily outside of our work life, we're trying to persuade people to agree to something or to do something in many of our interactions. So it really is something that should be taught at a very early age.
Yeah, it's so interesting when you mention this, Tom, because you do so many private classes for brokerages throughout the country, and the benefits of those private classes are just immense. I mean, I would imagine that if I own a brokerage firm, I only want better results for my clients and better results for my agents and brokers, because that keeps everybody happy. And if I keep everybody happy, that keeps my business growing. So tell us some of the benefits of what happens to a brokerage owner or manager that reaches out to RENI and says, hey, we've got 30, 40, 50 brokers or agents. We want you to come in. What does that sort of seminar look like? What does that entail? How long does that take?
Okay. First, we would tell a broker that there are multiple benefits for you to encourage your agents to take this training. Now, again, it's an independent contractor relationship, so the broker can't necessarily force them to take it. But we tell brokers, think of it this way. We have what we call a RENI referred program that would tell new agents coming into the brokerage that, and for recruiting purposes, that you really care about your agents. You have linked up with the leading negotiation training company in real estate to provide training in the number one skill set that you're going to need to be successful. So it helps your recruiting, it helps your retention, it helps your reputation, it helps you get better results because you get better trained agents, and it reduces your risk because agents who will invest the time and the money to take our training are more professional and they don't do some of the things that agents shouldn't do. So that's the benefit for the brokerage. Our training program has gotten very flexible. We started out being just live in-person instructors. I started recruiting instructors in real estate to teach my course back in 2006. And it would be a 2-day event, typically 12 hours. And we grew across the country. We taught over 60,000 agents that way up until 2020 when COVID hit. And I remember we had gotten to maybe 30, 35 agents across the country and in Canada, so we're North America. And all of a sudden, in March of 2020, the lockdown happened and we couldn't teach live in person. So in 2 weeks, we switched to Zoom and started teaching our classes that way. Unfortunately, we had a lot of our instructors, most of our instructors are also real estate agents. So their business took a hit. They had to focus on that. And many of them decided that this lockdown is not going to last that long. I don't really want to make the effort to learn Zoom. So I'll just sit back and wait and we'll get back in the classroom in no time. Didn't quite happen that way, as we all know. So we have the live in-person or Zoom training, and we can do that anywhere across the country. And we are rolling out our first online self-paced version of our primary course, the Certified Negotiation Expert course. And we spent over 6 months and hired an outside independent contractor who's an expert in adult online education, because much of online education in real estate is for continuing education. And it's really, for the most part, just words on a screen. And you don't learn effectively that way. So we wanted our class to be different. It's professional skill development. It's not just continuing education. So we spent 6 months putting in a huge amount of interaction in the online self-paced course. We have animated videos. We have knowledge checks. We have all kinds of techniques that make this a much more robust learning experience. And I'm happy to say that we're going to complete the process, if you will. If you think about the value you can add as a company, you can provide a service, and that can be good. You can provide an experience, which is even better, and it's something that will have a finite time to it. For example, if you want to go out and celebrate your anniversary, you go to a high-end steak restaurant, you get a wonderful meal, you get top-notch service. It's done, you remember it, but it's over and done with. The highest form of value you can provide to people is a transformation. And so we have agents, this is really interesting, Andy. The vast majority of agents who come into the real estate world have no business background. Over 70% have no business background. 15% come in with some business background, but no sales, where they might have gotten some negotiation training. And the other 15% come in from sales. The sales training is usually very different from negotiation training. So we have all these people who want to be successful, but they're not quite sure how to go about it. They've never built their own business. So we include all that information in our training. I think one of the things that our training stands out for is we use a structured, disciplined approach to negotiating with your money. We tell clients that. And you learn in business that goals are not what make you successful. Systems and processes make you successful. We all have the same goals. We all want to be successful, but not everybody makes it. So what's the real difference? The real difference is having the systems and processes that make you successful. So we teach them a very structured, disciplined way to negotiation. We have a 7-page planning tool that they can use from the very beginning to collect the information that they need to be able to plan strategically, to be able to figure out how I'm going to offer and counter offer, and how I get to closing. So that transformation can be done. It starts with the training in the classroom. That's the beginning point. But then it takes time to develop, and we can accelerate that time now because we're going to start to offer at the beginning of 2023 coaching and practice. Any skill that you want to develop, you have to practice first, and you need to practice in a safe environment. You don't want to practice in the game because that's not the right way to do it. And you can think of sports as an easy analogy. Think of all the time that professional athletes spend practicing versus actually playing in the game. So we're going to provide the coaching and the practice to where they'll have role plays. They'll pretend they're in front of clients or are talking to other agents, and we'll give them specific situations and take a deeper dive on it. And then part of the coaching will also involve what are you doing right now? What current transactions do you have? How can we help you with whatever situation you have right now? So we're really excited to accelerate that transformation, to get agents to the endpoint faster where they truly are experts, and they'll get better results faster for their clients.
Wow, what a great story for the entrepreneurs watching the show. Rewind what Tom just said. There were some pearls there. I mean, they changed a bit during COVID and they came out the other side, even a more powerful company than what they were prior. And they made some great changes and some new changes coming up that are just going to be spectacular. It's such a comprehensive program. Let's talk about the certification, the CNE, the Certified Negotiation Expert. Is that something that someone can actually get certified? Do you give them a certification when they get through a certain number of hours? How does that CNE work?
The CNE, as well as the Master CNE and the CMOE, they all work the same way. You take our training, it's 2 days of training, there's a test at the end, and once you pass the test, you're certified. Now, when I got into real estate, the National Association of Realtors has a number of designations and certifications, and they're the entity that does the certifying, if you will. So I started the Real Estate Negotiation Institute as the entity that would do the certifying, proving that we have the content, same content you would find at Harvard or Wharton, best schools in the country, all focused on the real estate transaction. So we wanted our students to have all of the examples, all the role plays to be real world real estate situations. So when they leave our training, they know they have a very good idea of how to apply it right away. There's general negotiation training out there you can take, but it's not applied specifically to real estate. So you'd have to go back to your workspace and figure out, how do I use this? We show them exactly how to. We have scripts for them. We enable them. We empower them the best we can. We also give them over 20 post-class materials, which include forms and checklists and a whole system that they can use. And we give them about a dozen marketing pieces so that they can market themselves differently than other agents. We want them to have this competitive advantage that they can show their clients they've invested their time, their money to get this higher skill level that will benefit them. The number one comment we get from our training, Andy, is that agents feel so much more confident to go into a negotiation. They know what to do. They're confident they can handle different situations, and they get undreamed of business success. We've had one agent said in the first 12 months after taking the class, they tripled their business. And we get lots of thousands of testimonials on how this content that we teach them helps them in different situations and in situations where other agents have failed. I had $1.5 million seller once, and I was a third agent to get the listing. The first two agents just unfortunately couldn't get the job done. I was able to help my client because we have different tools, different approaches, different ways of working that eventually will get you to an acceptable, if not an outstanding outcome.
Yeah, it's great, Tom. You know, it's a competitive field. So I think about it, you know, I'm going to sell my home and I want to interview 3 realtors, and the realtors come out and they show me their marketing materials and they show me, you know, the process, and they show me how they're going to take care of me. But the third realtor that I interview, they come out and they say, oh, by the way, I'm a certified negotiation expert from RENI, or I'm a master certified negotiation expert, MCNE. I'm designated from the RENI Association or the RENI Institute. As a seller, I would say to myself, this is the kind of guy or gal I would love to have on my team, because they know what it's going to take potentially to get my home to the finish line. They're going to be able to work with the other realtor. They're going to be able to potentially work with the buyer in a much higher level because they've gone through this master training that RENI provides. I love it. Now, let's talk about negotiation styles, because there's a lot of different styles out there. You read different books. There's, you know, people say, you know, you hammer them over the head and you get what you want. You walk from the table, or, you know, you pound the table. There's other negotiation styles. You know, we make it win-win. We want to find out what the other person wants, and then we work together in a collaborative way to make sure we both get sort of to the final outcome. Do you teach various negotiation styles, or do you have one negotiation style that really is sort of the mainstay for the RENI program?
That's a really interesting question, Andy. We do teach 3 styles. And two of them are the most common, the competitive style and the collaborative style. There's also the compliant style. And we only bring that up to let people know that a compliant agent or a negotiator typically has low self-esteem issues, and they want to be liked in every interaction that they're in. So they get to be liked by giving away everything the other side wants. They don't know how to negotiate. They just want to be smiled at, basically. So we tell them if that's the way you are, you need to shift over. It's very interesting because Harvard will say you need to be both competitive and collaborative in the same negotiation to get the best outcome. And what they mean by that is you have to be collaborative or cooperative to get information, share information. And information is the name of the game in negotiation. The more information you have, the better outcome you should be able to achieve. So you're collaborative, cooperative, you know how to ask questions, you know how to do so in a comfortable conversational style so that you'll get information. And that kind of defines how big the pie is, how many value elements there are on the table to work with instead of being under the table where you can't work with them. So once you know how big the pie is, what's on top of the table, now you have to be competitive, or we like the phrase assertive, because competitive can be somewhat negative. You know, you have to be assertive, especially when you're an agent on behalf of your client, to make sure your client gets what they deserve, what they need, what they want. So that combination is a true art form, if you will. We don't recommend one versus the other.
Yeah, I love it. And you mentioned the Harvard approach, and you've put that into play at the RENI program. We think about persuasion, and we spoke a little bit prior to our interview about persuasion. You and I both sort of love the whole science of persuasion. For the entrepreneurs watching the show, could you just share maybe a very high level about the way in which one could or should think about persuasion and the reason why it's such an important science to really understand in the business that they're in?
You know, I started really focusing on that topic when I got into real estate because there's a book called Influence, Science, and Practice by Dr. Robert Cialdini. He happens to be based here in Phoenix at the Arizona State University. So his book has 6 scientifically proven persuasion approaches that make you more effective at persuading others. Doesn't guarantee 100% success, but you'll be more successful. So I took some of those and some others, and we created the acronym SUCCESS, the word success, and each letter has a different persuasion principle that can be used to persuade. So the first one and the number 1 persuasion principle is the principle of self-interest. People will normally do what they perceive to be in their own self-interest. So you need to convince them that what you want them to do is in their self-interest. And usually in real estate, the big self-interest, the home sale or purchase is part of a bigger dream. So that's the big self-interest that we stay focused on. If you, whatever it is, to get to a bigger home for your family or downsizing or assisted living, if that's the case or something, we have to show you that doing this in particular will get you to your bigger dream faster, quicker. So then there's other principles like the principle of scarcity, uniqueness. People want something, the more scarce it is, the more unique it is. So whatever it is you're offering, try to make it unique as possible. So a real estate agent, with only 3% of agents having professional negotiation training, an agent who has that training is unique, and they can play on that. We have the what we call the exchange principle is very powerful. It's one of the workhorses in negotiation, and it basically says, I'll give you this if you give me that. We exchange items of value. I'll go first. Dr. Cialdini is very clear in his book. He calls it the principle of reciprocity. You go first. You give something to somebody first because that creates a sense of obligation in them that they owe you something in return. Almost every culture around the world teaches you that if somebody does something nice for you or gives you something, you owe them something in return. So by going first, you create that sense of obligation, and you can ask for it, identify it, what it is you want, but you have a better chance of getting it because I gave you what you wanted. Now I want something in return. The sameness principle, it's amazing how people want to do business with people they are like, or they like, or they want to be like. So find something that you have in common, some connection that you have. People like you when you do certain things, like if you compliment them, if you find a connection that you have, you went to the same school, you go to the same church, your kids are in the same school. those types of things can really make the difference in people wanting to do business with you, wanting to work with you. And then there's the sound logic principle. The principle of reason says if you give people a good sound logical reason, you have a better chance that they'll do what you want them to do. The brain works. There's a common saying that we typically buy based on emotion and justify based on logic. So we have to address the emotions in the right brain and deal with those consciously because they're there. And people often make that decision first emotionally, but they want to be sound logical people. So they shift to the left brain and say, now, how can I justify this using logic? We call that whole brain influencing. And sometimes your logic isn't going to be very good. If it's a strong seller's market and you're the buyer, the power is on the seller side of the table. So your logic may not be the way for you to be able to persuade and influence, but the emotions in the right brain can often be the key to getting the deal put together. I have to tell you, Andy, my best transaction I had in real estate, I got a call one day from a couple who needed to buy a home. They had sold their home and they needed to buy one relatively quickly. A lovely couple, and the wife said, Tom, I have lupus, and within the next 12 months, I'm going to be in a wheelchair. So here's what I need in a home. I need a home with wide hallways for the wheelchair. And ideally, if we could find a home that already has all tile, no carpet, that we have to change out the tile, that would be wonderful. So we found a perfect home for them. It was owned by an investor. It was vacant. We went to see it. They fell in love with it. It met all their needs. I called the listing agent and asked her, I said, do you have any offers? Yes, we do. I said, could you tell me what price you have? And she did, because a lot of agents won't. But she gave me the price, and it was higher than what my buyers could go. And they just couldn't go that high. But I thought, okay, there's other ways to try to deal with this. So I had told the wife that had lupus, I said, write a letter from your heart about what this house means to you. It's authentic, it's real, it's not manipulative, but it's such a factor for you and your personal situation. I want to have that. I asked the listing agent if I could present this offer face-to-face to the seller and the listing agent. Not done normally in real estate, but in my corporate world, we always negotiated face-to-face. There are advantages to do that. The owner was an investor out of town. I couldn't present face-to-face, but I did go to the listing agent's office, presented, showed the letter. An hour after I left, the listing agent called me and said, I sent the letter to the owner. They were touched and they're going to sell to your buyers. That was the best transaction I ever had. And it was in an authentic way. It wasn't manipulative at all. And people are touched by that. We're all human beings, and that really can be a factor in the decision.
Wow. What a great story. I mean, I love that. And I'm sure that your clients, they just loved you for that, right? And then they send referrals and testimonials. And I know you're big on client testimonials and referrals, and you teach that as part of your Negotiation Institute training. It's remarkable. I'm going to bring you back on the show. I want to talk about the success principles and what all of those means based on Cialdini's, principles. It's a great, great show. I can already envision it here in the future. Before I let you go today, and thanks so much, I've only cut out a certain amount of time. You've only cut out a certain amount of time for me. Of course, you're so busy. Let's get back to the younger entrepreneurs watching the show, because, they hit a tough time. They hit a roadblock. I mean, all businesses, we have client acquisition costs. We have client acquisition approaches. We try and build trust with our clients. We negotiate sales and purchase terms, for our businesses all the time. And we execute contracts. And of course, we're very interested in client testimonials and referrals as part of social proof for our business. But for the younger entrepreneurs, Tom, watching the show, they're having a tough time, hitting a roadblock, freezing the frame. We've been there. We've all been there. What kind of advice can you give to the younger entrepreneurs to get through those tough times?
It's interesting to me. I had this corporate career where I had all these resources available to me. You become an entrepreneur and you're the jack of all trades, master of either none or some. And you have to learn these things either the hard way or you educate yourself on other people's mistakes. I say I'd recommend the book, Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. In that book, he teaches that the customer is always the hero. Many salespeople want to go in and be the hero for the customer. We all want to be the hero in our own life. So we are a guide with a plan that leads to success and not failure. And when you keep the spotlight on the client as the hero, that changes the whole mindset. And Donald Miller does marketing classes on all this whole approach. And when you shift that way, he has people who have doubled, tripled, and quadrupled their revenue in 1 year. So it's a very effective focus to stay on the client. I recommend that. Years ago, I found a book called The Founder's Mentality. And it was done by Bain and Company, big consulting firm. And over a period of 10 years, which included the last Great Recession, they evaluated over 1,000 companies to see which ones were more successful. There were about 10 companies that made a profit in each of those 10 years, even during the Great Recession. So they focused on those 10 companies to see what did they do differently? What did they do similarly? And they found there were three things. They had the owner's mindset was well entrenched throughout the company. The owner has a passion that stayed there. There was a clear mission and purpose. But the one that stood out to me, Andy, was what they said. Those companies had a relentless obsession with the front line. Now, the relentless obsession with the front line, your front line are the people in your company who have the direct contact with the customer. And they will make the first impression on that customer as to whether they're going to go forward with you or keep you or go away. So my instructors are my front line. So I wanted to enable them, empower them, give them the best training, make sure they learned the content, make sure they became true instructors in the classroom or on Zoom, so they create this experience that the students can't get anywhere else. But I think that relentless obsession with the front line is a key for success. Entrepreneurs have to learn to work on the business, not just in the business. When you're starting out, I taught full time when I switched over to teaching, but I also was recruiting instructors trying to grow the business. At some point, you've got to hire other people to do the admin work that you don't need to do. You need to focus on where you add the value the most. And I'm a big believer, I learned this at Procter & Gamble, you have to be a lifelong learner. Continual learning, continual improvement was part of the total quality program way back in the 80s. And if you're not continually improving and moving ahead, you're standing still. Your competition is improving. They're going to pass you by. So you need to be a lifelong learner. We have a resource library of about 175 books. If the book has influence, negotiation, or persuasion in the title, we probably have it. We get books on building trust, on storytelling, because it's such a great way to persuade. We have books on your value proposition, selling, all that. So we can continually upgrade our content to bring the best and most recent learnings from that whole area.
Amazing. Thousands and thousands of people have gone through the training. If you're interested in learning more, check out Tom and his team. If you maybe think you want to become an instructor, find out what's going on with that. That's an opportunity as well that Tom provides. And he has some of the best instructors in the business. So Tom, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. I already know I'm having you back. This has been a great interview. So when I interview people, when I learn constantly throughout the interview, I know I've had a good interview. So thank you so much, Tom. You've actually made an impact in me and my life and my business as well. So thanks so much for coming on the .com Magazine Entrepreneur Spotlight Series today.
Thank you, Andy. It's been a real pleasure.